When responding to an action brought against your family, it is critical or crucial to distinguish between revenge and justice. Revenge is driven by emotional impulses, seeking personal retribution, often leading to disproportionate and destructive responses. It can escalate conflicts and perpetuate cycles of violence. We can see that in the Middle East. Justice, on the other hand, is grounded in fairness and proportionality, aiming to address the wrong in a way that upholds moral and legal standards. Justice seeks resolution and restoration rather than perpetuating harm. After approaching situations with a focus on justice, promotes healing, accountability, and the possibility of reconciliation, contributing to a more constructive and peaceful outcome. I'm Dr. Ray, and welcome to this week's Hosea International Speaks. Training up the next generation means educating everyone in the ecclesia, or in the case of Jacob, it should have included the whole tribe, women included. Just because Yahweh gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob the charge or mandate of training up their children does not mean that everyone in the household will abide by the laws of the camp. Chapter 24 begins with the daughter of Jacob through his first wife, Leah, going to see, I want you to notice that phrase, going to see what was happening in the town of Shechem. Something in the town caught her eyes. The Hebrew word to see here is the same Hebrew word which is used in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, when the woman, Eve, saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to the eyes and a tree to be desired. She took the fruit and ate. Was Dinah doing the same? Something was good to her eyes, something that caught her eye. It seemed to her to be delightful to her eyes and something to be desired. The scripture says that she went out to see the daughters of the land. You can see that in Genesis chapter 34, verse 1. But in searching out the land, she was caught up in a situation that caused her demise. She was raped. For it was the lust of the flesh, the pride of life that caught the eye of the king's son, Shechem. But the picture that is painted for us here is that a door was opened for Shechem, the son of Hamor, which allowed for this rape to happen. Was this the fault of Jacob's camp, or was it that Dinah might have snuck out without an escort, which was the norm for a young virgin? In the days of the patriarchs, young virgins in the land of Canaan were typically required to be escorted wherever they went to ensure their safety and to protect their honor. This practice was rooted in the cultural norms and values of the time, which placed a high emphasis on the virtue and reputation of women, particularly those of marriageable age. An escort, usually a family member or trusted servant, would accompany the young woman to safeguard her from potential harm or unwanted attention, thereby maintaining her family's honor and social standing. This protective measure was integral to the social fabric and helped ensure that women remained respected and their integrity preserved within the community. And I'm pretty sure this was taught in the camp of Jacob. But because of curiosity of it, Dinah led to her demise. It would also be that we practice that today. Now, I can understand some families, nope, I don't want my daughter being escorted with anybody. Well, it wouldn't be just anybody. It could be some of the female. I noticed some movies when you see, even in Italy, the women wouldn't walk alone. They'd be escorted. Now, there was no formal court system as we understand it today during that time, and responses to crimes such as rape were often handled within the family or tribal structure. The patriarchal society of that time placed significant emphasis on family honor and immediate justice. As illustrated here in Genesis chapter 34 with the story of Dinah, Jacob's daughter, it was not uncommon for male siblings to take matters into their own hands to avenge an assault of a family member. Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, half-brothers, chose to enact vengeance directly rather than seeking a judicial resolution, indicating that personal and family retribution was a common response. However, this action was not necessarily condoned by all, as Jacob later rebuked the sons for their violent and deceitful retaliation, highlighting the potential for disagreement and the complexity of justice within these early communities. The lack of a formalized legal system often meant that the immediate family or tribal leaders determined the course of action, which could vary significantly depending on the circumstances and individuals involved. Now, this was serious. And so I believe Simeon and Levi were seeking for revenge. The king of Shechem had come up with some solution, but it did not seem to settle within Simeon and Levi, but only take advantage of it. It is not specifically stated that Israel should not intermarry with those of Canaan, but it is alluded to in two key illustrations, especially when it came to the patriarch lineage. We notice in Genesis chapter 24, verses 2, 3, and 4, Abraham instructs his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac, not from the Canaanites, because that's where they were, but from his own relatives back in Mesopotamia. This implies a preference for marriage within the extended family rather than with the local Canaanite population. Genesis 24, 3 and 4 says this, I want you to swear by the Lord, by Yahweh, the Elohim of Abraham and the Elohim of the earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac. Genesis chapter 28 seems to be about the same way. Isaac gives a similar directive to his son Jacob, instructing him not to marry a Canaanite woman, but to go to Paddan Aram to find a wife from the daughters of Laban, his maternal uncle. Genesis 28, 1 and 2 says this, so Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. Then he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's brother, Bethuel. Take a wife from yourself there, from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother, Jacob's uncle. And we saw that situation before. Did the sons of Jacob identify with the separation that had been inscribed into the family and thereby stand with what had been instituted and then exact revenge on the men of the city of Shechem, which was most likely named after Hamar's first son? Jacob brings another solution that Hamor and the men of Shechem agreed upon, and that was that all the male of the city would be circumcised and that there could be marriage between the two groups. Unfortunately, Simeon and Levi took it upon themselves to call for the death of all the men of the city while they were in their most vulnerable time, thereby attacking the city with probably the servants of their own household helping them. This action enraged Jacob, for he feared that the rest of the nations in Canaan would now come after them. His words to Simeon and Levi were, you have made me odious among the inhabitants of the land. For example, you have made such a stink around here, we must leave. You can see that. Sometimes we use that today. You've made a stink place here. Let's get out. It is at this time that he packs up his family and is ready to move campsites. It is at this time he is instructed also by Yahweh to move back to Bethel. You can see that in chapter 35, verses 1 and following. Dwell there, he says, and make an altar to Elohim. The family is instructed by the patriarch Jacob to put away their, notice the four or five things here, put away their strange gods, make yourself clean, change your garments, arise, go up to Bethel, this is what the Lord tells them, and make an altar unto Yahweh. As soon as they followed the instruction given to them by Yahweh, the terror of Elohim was upon the cities that had been in the vicinity, so that they did not go after Israel for what they had done to the city of Shechem. The picture that is painted here for us in the word fear, that the fear came upon them, is something that, which is not stated, caused the city that they might come out against them to stop in their attack. The picture that is painted is an action of some sort, maybe a phenomenon in the heavenlies or in the skies, caused them to cease in their actions against Israel. A wall of some sort or a sign in the heavens. Has unforeseen circumstance caused you to abandon your plans, or cause this to be a hand of Yahweh in directing your steps? Well, whichever it may be, before taking your next step, do as Jacob did. Ask Yahweh which way to go, and maybe stay. You might be jumping the gun, and he might be telling you to stay. Whatever it would be, do what is needed. Psalm 32:8 says this, I will instruct you and teach you in the way which you shall go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. In other words, he's not going to leave you nor forsake you. Jacob received word from Yahweh to go to the house of Bethel, and make an altar there, a place of prayer. It is here that he talked with Yahweh, and Yahweh reminded Jacob of what he had promised to his grandfather Abraham, what he had promised to his father Isaac, and now promised to himself, to him. Yahweh will talk to you in your place of prayer, whenever it may be. Sometimes it might have to be in the middle of the night. He might get you up. We might just have to be quiet and hear what thus says Yahweh. Well, if you enjoyed this week, hit the like button. And if you have not yet subscribe, now would be a good time to do so. And we'll pick it up here next week in chapter 35, where now Jacob is coming into his land. Well, if you wish to give, go ahead and scan one of the two QR codes that you see right here. If you need to stop freeze your frame there and hit it with your phone, go ahead and do so. Well, I'm Dr. Ray, and I'll see you next week on Hosea International Speaks.